Hey, today I'm going to talk about three French movies, and their titles are listed right next to me because there is no way I'm going to try to pronounce these very French titles because I am very American. But I'm also very excited to talk about these movies. The first up is Breathe. That's how you say that title in English. It's Breathe. This is a 2015 movie starring Sophie Jabi and Lou de Lagarge. Nailed it. The basic premise of this is that it's about these two high school girls who, one of them just moved to town and they become friends, and it's kind of just about regular friendshipy stuff. Some people kind of describe this movie as about toxic relationships, but I think that kind of diminishes what it's really about. There's a scene near the beginning that I think perfectly encapsulates the thesis of what this movie is actually about. Essentially what happens is they're in the classroom. I don't know what class it is. It might be English or philosophy or something. But the teacher poses this question about passion and free will, and whether or not passion removes us from free will, or if we have even more free will when we have passion. And it's a really interesting debate about, are we losing control of ourselves? Are we not actually ourselves when we're full of passion? Or we're just so full of passion where those actions that we do, we literally can't stop ourselves from doing those things? Or are we completely in control? Or is it our fault for letting our emotions get so out of control that we can't stop our actions? And it's such a really, really interesting idea. And I think that's what the entire movie is about. It's kind of maybe sort of like a thriller-ish, but not really, because it's more just about relationships. And it does get dark at times, and it ends in a very interesting way that I was not expecting. I wouldn't call it a twist ending by any means, but it's just like I think it's just really the thesis come to life as much as possible. And it's so good. The two main actresses did great. I particularly loved Lou. I already looked at other movies with her, and I'm like, already put them on the list of like, okay, I'm gonna watch these real soon. But yeah, I really liked it. I don't know if I would recommend it necessarily. It's about abusive relationships and stuff, and some manipulation and stuff, and it can get pretty intense. But yeah, it's definitely worth it if this looks intriguing, because I loved it so much. Such a good one. Such a good one. Next up is The Young Girls of, however you say that last word. It's a town. It's a town in France. So this is a 1967 movie, and it stars the woman who starred in The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Belle de Jour. And I loved both those movies so much. And I actually didn't even recognize her right away. It was when I was like looking stuff up about this movie that I was like, oh, it's the same person. Oh my god. That's great. It also stars her sister, which is really cool. I actually really liked her a lot in here too. And then it has a surprise-ish American cameo by Gene Kelly. Yeah. Except, according to the internet, all of his singing is dubbed, which definitely sounds dubbed. And then like half of his dialogue is dubbed. And it's like, I can definitely tell when it wasn't Gene Kelly's voice, because I'm like, I know his voice. I know his voice very well. And I'm like, that's not it. That's not it. Stop it. So I don't know if like his French just wasn't up to par or something, but I don't know. He was still great in it. So anyway, this is a musical, but it's kind of more of like a dancing musical rather than more of a singing musical, if that makes sense. Like there's a lot of scenes where it's just people dancing and no one's singing, and like the dancing doesn't always, it's like, why are you dancing right now? You're not really accomplishing anything other than just like being impressive dancing. It's just, we're not really moving anything forward with this. And that would be my big complaint about this movie, is just like, the dancing can be a bit much at times. It's still very, very impressive. I put this movie in the quite liked. I really loved all of like the colors and the costumes. The dancing was obviously great. And then what I realized after the movie is like, even though there's not that many like songs where people sing, the songs that people did sing were catchy and like stuck in my head, and I was like trying to sing them, and I was like, I can't speak French. This isn't working. Stop doing this, Charlie. Do something else. So yeah, it's great. It's really solid. So the premise of this movie is that it's kind of just about love, finding love in like all sorts of like missed opportunity type things, or like maybe you like happenstance run into someone and like that starts something. And it's kind of interesting, but not, the story's not great. They kind of set up, there's a lot of characters and they set up a lot of different connections, and things don't really connect again. Like they set it up right at the very beginning and they don't connect again until like right at the end of the movie. And I'm like, what is everything else in there about? What is this about? So that was a little frustrating, but I get that it's about, you know, different kinds of relationships. So I can sort of understand it, but it took it down a little bit. I will also say, so I've watched a few other movies from this time period, you know, the 50s and 60s, and I've complained about like, there's like a 22 to 34-year-old actress and she's dating someone who's like literally twice her age, like 20, 25, 30 years older than her, and just how it's kind of gross looking. This movie sort of did it, because like everyone has multiple love interests. So like the main two actresses, they have love interests that are their age and they have love interests that are way older than them. And it's just like, it's hard to make out what it all means. So yeah, I definitely quite like this movie. It has lots of style and the dancing was great and the colors were great. It's just kind of some of the story things that I wasn't a huge fan of. So definitely of the main actress, the 3 movies I've seen of her, this is my least favorite of the 3, but it's still quite liked. It's still good. And like if you want some good French musical goodness, it's worth checking out. Especially like it's those colors, man. Those colors are so good. And lastly is the most assassinated woman in the world. This is a 2018 Netflix movie starring I don't care. And yeah, as soon as I started this movie, I was like, this is a mistake. Because like the first scene of the movie is this woman walking down a dark whatever, and lights are going off, and she's hurrying along, looking back, and hurrying along, looking back, and hurrying along, looking back. And just, it keeps doing that over and over and over again. And after the 3rd time she looks back, it doesn't get any more interesting after that. So the premise of the movie, it's apparently based on a real woman who lived in France in 1932, who they did these like stage plays that were really graphic with lots of fake blood everywhere, and she'd get killed on stage multiple times a night, and it was just all sorts of gore and stuff, and people hated it because it's like, it's sacrilegious or something, even though it's fine, it's whatever. And then so many people were like, oh hey, if you get killed so much on stage, don't you think someone's gonna want to kill you in real life? Huh? And it's like, stop it, that's dumb. You're like the 5th person to say this. You're trying to foreshadow something. I don't care anymore. I hated this movie so much. I tried. I kept having to pause it, and I really just should have just stopped watching it. I just couldn't admit to myself I needed to stop watching it. While watching it, about halfway through, I discovered that Rocket League is free on Switch. So I downloaded that and played that for a bit instead of actually watching the rest of this movie. So yeah, it's bad. I don't recommend it. Yeah, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. I don't really have any great big eloquent ways of putting why and how I don't like this movie and how it's bad and why it's stupid and stuff. It's just dumb. I don't recommend it. Not even as like oh, let's put something on in the background. It's just like a no. Just like we should remove this from Netflix. It's just a Netflix movie with like the lowest budget and the worst editors and just the worst everything. Yeah. So please do yourself a favor and don't watch this movie. Just don't. Just don't. Alrighty, now for today's ranking. So first up we have Breathe, and it's at number 5 in the really liked category. It was so great. I kind of feel like it might move up a little bit eventually, because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that movie's so good. And then second is The Young Girls of whatever that word is. It's in number 11 in the quite like section. And then bringing up the rear, rightfully so, is the most assassinated woman. I don't care about the rest of that sentence. At number 20, out of a total of 21 movies so far this year. What's really interesting too is that out of the first 21 movies that I watched, the first 2/3 of those movies are in either the really liked or quite liked section. And that was not intentional. I usually, I try to watch movies that I think I'm gonna like, but usually it doesn't end up being like this many that I like. With the way my list ended up last year, it was about half were either really liked or quite liked. So it's kind of interesting how it's leaning more this way now. So I might, try to balance things out and intentionally watch some bad movies. I have some on the back burner that I've been wanting to watch. So we'll see what happens. But I also like being surprised by how much I hate something. Like number 20 there. I really enjoyed that. I hated that movie. That's not true. I hate that movie so much. It's so dumb.